Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita reading. So we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 16, the Kaishora Leela of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. The pastimes of the Lord in his childhood. So this is later childhood and youth. So we are reading about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's defeating Keshav Kashmiri. So we are now hearing from Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So we read the other day that on one moonlit night, on the bank of the Ganges, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was with his students discussing literary topics. And by coincidence, Keshav Kashmiri happened to come there at the same time. And he went into the assembly of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his disciples. And Mahaprabhu invited him very respectfully, gave him a seat. But this Keshav Kashmiri, being a Digvijayi Pandit, was very puffed up of his position. So he was puffed up in his dealings. So he didn't talk to the Lord in a respectful way at all. He talked to him very inconsiderately. So when he heard that here is Nimai Pandit, he said, "Oh, you are that Nimai Pandit. People talk very highly about you. So what do they talk about you? They talk about you very highly as a teacher of beginner's grammar." So that itself was putting down Mahaprabhu right there. And also, I understand that you teach Kalapa Vyakarana. Okay, so there Srila Prabhupada said that grammar, when you learn Sanskrit for the first 12 years, you're actually learning grammar in Sanskrit. So learning grammar is very important, and it is time consuming. So at least 12 years. It takes 12 years to study Sanskrit grammar. And then when you learn grammar, now all the Vedas and all the scriptures are open to you. Now you can go and read them, because now only then you'll be able to understand the knowledge, gain the knowledge that is given in the scriptures. So, but here Keshav Kashmiri was not saying that with the intention of glorifying Mahaprabhu. Rather, his intention was to say that you're just a beginning, because grammar is learned in the beginning stages. So you are a teacher of the beginner's grammar. Whereas his position was he was a very advanced, learned scholar. So that was his intention there. So when he said like that, how did Mahaprabhu respond? He said, actually, people say I'm a teacher, but what kind of a teacher I am? I am not even able to impress my students about grammar. That means I'm not able to teach even, the beginners. I'm not even capable of teaching them. And whatever attempts I make to teach, those students are not even able to understand what I teach. So, um, so he really put himself very down, kind of agreed. And then he said, but you are so learned, you are so exalted, you know all the scriptures. I have a desire. That, no, he also said, in front of, what am I in front of you? Right? I'm just like a small boy. You're like a very, very experienced, very advanced, learned scholar, and I'm just uh, like a child, right? Like a new student in front of you. So now I feel so honored to be in your presence, and I have a desire to hear your poetry. Can you compose something in glorification of Mother Ganges? Kindly, if you don't mind, right? We would like to hear. If you can mercifully say something in glorification of Mother Ganges. So obviously, when Keshav Kashmiri heard his own glorification, he became even more puffed up. And then, like the raging wind, immediately he composed and recited on the spot 100 verses glorifying Mother Ganges. So then we'll begin from there today. শুনিয়া করিল প্রভু বহুত সৎকার তোমা সম পৃথিবীতে কবি নাহি আরা. Okay, so Achintadev Prabhu,
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled devotees.
please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhuji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
The Lord praised him, saying, Sir, there is no greater poet than you in the entire world. Thank you,
Yes,
Mataji.
thank you. So the first thing he said, my God, such amazing poetry. I can say there's no one greater than you in the entire world. Nobody can compose poetry like this on the spot. So he acknowledged the greatness of Keshav Kashmiri. তোমারা কবিতা শ্লোক বুঝিতে কার শক্তি তুমি ভালো জানো अर्थ কিংবা सरस्वती. Yes, Arunita.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Your poetry is so difficult that no one can understand it but you and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning.
Yeah. So, my God, you're such a great poet. And then your poetry is so wonderful. It is so wonderful. It is so great that no one can understand what you said. Your words are, you chose such big, big words. We don't even know the meanings, right? And you compose such a nice poetry, we cannot even understand. Either you will understand it or Goddess Saraswati. Other than the two of you, no one will understand what you say. So then what is Srila Prabhupada's purport here? Arunita?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Replying to Keshav Kashmiri sarcastically, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indirectly minimized the value of his poetry by saying, yes, your compositions are so nice that no one but you and your worshipful mother, goddess of learning, can understand them. Keshav Kashmiri was a favorite devotee of Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the master of the goddess of learning, has the right to speak sarcastically of her devotees. In other words, though Keshav Kashmiri was proud of being favored by the goddess of learning, he did not know that she is controlled by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So the point is, Mahaprabhu is being sarcastic here. When he said, it is so wonderful that only you can understand, or your mother, Goddess Saraswati. That means your deity. worshipable deity, Goddess Saraswati. Only the two of you can understand. No one else can understand. She has blessed you with such learning, so she knows, and you what you spoke only you know, and she knows. Nobody else knows. So what is the value of such poetry which cannot be understood by anyone else? So he was being sarcastic here. But how can he be sarcastic of Goddess Saraswati? Because he is even her master. So that is the relationship of master and servant, right? The master can, because he is the maintainer, he is the protector, and he is the master. Here, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. So he has the right to criticize. She is his maid servant, and her devotees are like even subordinate. So that's why here it is said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the master, he is the master of the goddess of learning. He had the right to speak sarcastically of her devotees. So here he is actually criticizing this Keshav Kashmiri. It's not that he is criticizing Saraswati Devi. He's criticizing. Why is he criticizing Keshav Kashmiri? Because he's so puffed up. He's thinking there's no one equal to me, no one better than me. That's why he addressed Mahaprabhu like that, saying that, oh, you're just a teacher of beginner's grammar. That just shows how proud he is. I'm so great. Who are you? Like that. So Mahaprabhu is immediately putting him down, showing him his place like that by criticizing. It is, your poetry is so great that except you and your goddess, nobody knows this, what you're saying. Of course, Keshav Kashmiri, in his pride, did not know that his worshipable deity is a servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He didn't know that. He will know soon. एक श्लोकेर अर्थ जदि करो निज मुखे शुनि सब लोक तबे पाइबो बड़ सुखे. Krishnashish.
But if you explain the meaning of one verse, you can all hear it from your own mouth and thus be very happy.
Yes. So just like we have Sanskrit verses, we don't know Sanskrit. We cannot understand because we didn't study grammar. So if you hear a Sanskrit verse, if nobody gave you the word meanings, you won't be able to understand what that shloka is talking about, isn't it? But then when you have someone like a commentary of that verse, Sanskrit, Bhagavatam is written in Sanskrit only, but still so many acharyas have given commentaries on each verse. Sridhar Swami's commentary is there, Jiva Goswami's commentary is there, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary is there, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary is there, Srila Prabhupada's commentary is there. Many commentaries are there. So commentary is required to understand what is there in that verse. So Mahaprabhu is saying, your verses on the glorification of Goddess Saraswati are so great. We can tell that they're amazing, but we didn't understand anything. Can you just explain one verse? You have recited 100 verses. Just give a commentary, an explanation of that verse. Just like Vyasdev has written Vedanta Sutras, and he himself gave a commentary on the Vedanta Sutras in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, like that. That's why it's called natural commentary. Natural commentary means the author himself is giving the commentary, like that. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary of Vedanta Sutras. Like that we also have for Tattva Sandarbha. On Tattva Sandarbha there's a commentary called Tarka Sangraha, like that. So by the same author you have commentary. So here Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, if you explain the meaning of one verse, we can all hear it from your own mouth and we will become very happy because now we will understand what you said. Otherwise, we didn't understand anything. It sounded beautiful, but we didn't know what you said. Just explain one verse. Tabe digvijayi vyakyara shloka puchila shata shlokera eka shloka prabhuta padila. Madhava.
Liquid case of Kashmir inquired. The liquid case of Kashmiri inquired which verse he wanted to explain. The Lord then recited one of the 100 verses case of Kashmiri had composed.
So he recited 100 verses at the speed of the wind, it is said. They didn't understand anything. They didn't understand anything. At least that's what they said. Everyone said, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu especially. So he said, we didn't understand anything. And now he asks, which of these 100 verses do you want me to explain? Which particular shloka do you want me to explain? So he inquired, which verse do you want an explanation for? And then in response, Mahaprabhu immediately, he didn't say number 1 or number 19. He immediately recited a particular verse. I think it is 64th or something. And he numbered it also. He said that one, and then he recited that verse as is, the way Keshav Kashmiri had composed it, exactly in the same way Mahaprabhu recited. And he said, I want the explanation for this verse. He recited one of the 100 verses Keshava Kashmiri had composed. And this is the verse. Wow. How does the meter go? Mahatvam Gangaya Satatam Midam Abhati Nitaram Yadesha Sri Vishno's Charana Kamalo Patti Subhaga Dvitiya Shri Lakshmi Rivasura Narairarchyat Charana Bhavani Bharturya Shirasi Vibhavatyadbhuta Guna. I don't know if this is the meter. I just said it like that. Translation. Rasapriya.
The greatness of Mother Gandhi always brilliantly exists. She is the most fortunate because she emanated from the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. She is a second goddess of fortune, and therefore she is always worshipped both by demigods and by humanity, and endowed with all wonderful qualities. She flourishes on the head of Lord Shiva.
The greatness of Mother Ganges. So this is the verse, one of the 100 verses composed by Keshava Kashmiri. The greatness of Mother Ganges always brilliantly exists. She is the most fortunate because she emanated from the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. She is the second goddess of fortune, and therefore she is always worshipped both by demigods and by humanity. Endowed with all wonderful qualities, she flourishes on the head of Lord Shiva. Okay, this is the verse. But if you look at the Sanskrit, so she is called here that she is residing on the head of Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva is not said directly. Lord Shiva is called Bhavani Bhartaha. She is, she is decorating the head of Bhavani Bharta, it is said. Just pay attention to that and then we'll see further. Next. She flourishes on the head of Bhavani Bharta, like that. Next. এই শ্লোকের অর্থ করো প্রভু যদি বইল বিস্মিত হয়া দিগ্বিজয়ী প্রভুরে পুছিল. Okay, next, Kalpesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhuji. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him to explain the meaning of this verse, the champion, were very much astonished, inquired from him as follows.
He never faced a situation like this, Keshava Kashmiri, that he recited, he was confident about his, his scholarship. He has already conquered all the different lands. He knows his capabilities, superhuman, scholarship. But when he saw someone remember the verse, out of the 100 verses, one verse he memorized on the spot and he is able to reproduce it. He was astonished when Mahaprabhu said this particular verse, and this particular verse means he actually recited that verse, and he said, can you please explain the meaning of that verse? After reciting that, he said, can you explain the meaning of this verse? This Digvijayi Pandit was astonished, and then he asked a question. He inquired from Mahaprabhu. What did he inquire? झंझावात प्राय आम्ही श्लोक पडिला तार मध्ये श्लोक तुम्ही कोयचे कंठे कोयला. So who's next? Narsimha Prahladeshwar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
I recited all the verses like the blowing wind. How could you completely learn by heart even one among those verses? Correct.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Even one of those verses, if anyone could remember even one of those verses, that's mind-blowing. And Mahaprabhu had all the 100 memorized. But even if anyone can remember one, that was too much for Keshav Kashmiri. He was able to compose because he was blessed by Goddess Saraswati. How can someone else even memorize one of the shlokas that he has composed? So he was amazed, and he's saying, I recited them at the speed of the blowing wind. How could you completely learn by heart? See, every morning when we do Srimad Bhagavatam class, so many devotees recite, and even then, if we are asked to recite the verse without seeing, will we be able to recite the verse? And Mahaprabhu heard it only once, and that too at the speed of the wind, and he could actually memorize it and he could repeat it. So that was amazing too, Keshav Kashmiri. Prabhu kohe devera vare tumi kavi vara, aiche devera vare ke hoy shruti dhara. Nilambari Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji pronouns. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Mataji, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
The Lord replied, by the grace of the Lord, someone may become a great poet, and similarly, by his grace, someone else may become a great Shrutidhar who can memorize anything immediately.
Yes. So you are so great a poet, you can compose such wonderful verses by the grace of Goddess Saraswati, isn't it? Or by the grace of the Supreme Lord, because we understand from Bhagavad Gita, whatever the demigods are bestowing upon us, it's not their property. It is borrowed property. They get it from the Supreme Lord and they give it to their worshippers. So ultimately, whatever we get, it is actually the Lord's benediction. He's bestowing it upon us. So your being such a great scholar is by the mercy of the Lord. So if the Lord's mercy can be upon you, can the Lord's mercy not be upon someone else? So just as you are a great poet by the grace of the Lord, similarly, by the grace of the same Lord, somebody else can become a great Shrutidhara. Shrutidhara means he will hear once and he can remember it for the rest of his life. Anything. Simply he has to hear once and he can memorize it. They all used to be Shrutidharas in previous ages. That's why we didn't have any written books. They would hear once from the Guru, and entire Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by Sukadev Goswami, right? Parikshit Maharaj heard, he didn't write down anything, and he had it all in his memory. Then just before, after the whole Srimad Bhagavatam was recited, then before, there was a short time before the snake bird came, and then immediately his mother Uttara came, and in great bereavement, like she asked him. So then, now he told, to pacify his mother, he told, but he didn't have so much time. Sukadev Goswami said Srimad Bhagavatam in 7 days, but now he had hardly, some few minutes left. So he spoke that Bhagavatam in essence. The point I'm trying to say is he simply heard once, but he was able to retain it, and now he was able to give it to another person. And then what to speak of Suta Goswami? He was there in the assembly listening. We don't hear that he's sitting down and taking notes or anything. He was listening. And then again, later on, the sages at Naimisharanya asked him to repeat the same things which he heard from Sukadev Goswami, or what Sukadev Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj. He was able to speak. That means they were Shrutidharas. By hearing, they could actually retain what they heard. So here Mahaprabhu is also saying to Keshav Kashmiri that by the Lord's grace, somebody else can become Shrutidhara. Just as by the Lord's grace, you are a great poet, someone else can become a Shrutidhara. Purport. So, shall we read one more round? Did everyone read today? I think so. So, let's try. We'll do one more round. Achintadev Prabhu. You can read the first paragraph.
Yes, Maharaj. In this connection, Shruti Dhara is a very important word. Shruti means hearing and Dhara means one who can capture. Formerly, before the beginning of Kali Yuga, almost everyone, especially among the intelligent men, the Brahmanas, was a Shruti Dhara. As soon as a student heard any of the Vedic wisdom from his master, he would remember it forever. There was no need to refer to books, and therefore there was no written books in those days. The spiritual master delivered the Vedic hymns and their explanations to the students, who would then remember them forever without consulting books.
Yes, Prabhuji. So in this connection, yes, Shrutidhara is a very important word. Shrutidhara, Shruti means hearing and Dhara means one who can capture. Shruti Dhara, like Dharan, right? Holding it. So Shruti is hearing, and after hearing, if you are able to retain it, that is Shruti Dhara. So students were like that. So there was no need of books because everything was like now we store it on our computers or in books. There they would just hear and it would be there in their memory, right? They would have it forever. So there was no need of any books. Next paragraph, Mataji or Arunita, one of you can read.
To become a Shrutidhara, one who can remember simply by hearing, is a great achievement for a student. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.41, the Lord says, Yad yad vibhuti matsatvam srimad urjitam eva va tat eva vagaccha tvam mama etejo musa sambhavam. Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. As soon as we find anything extraordinary, we should understand that such an extraordinary manifestation is the special grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to the champion Keshava Kashmiri that just as he was greatly proud of being a favorite devotee of Mother Saraswati, so someone else, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, being favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could become a Shrutidhara and thus memorize anything immediately simply by hearing it.
Yeah. So one more thing, one more point that comes to my mind as we read this part is the Lord is ultimately trying to bring us all to our original position of being a devotee. We are all originally that being a part and parcel of Krishna, our nature is to serve him, being a devotee. What is the difference between the mentality of a devotee and someone who's not a devotee? So in this material world, the nature is I want all good things for myself, isn't it? And that myself sometimes becomes extended self. It can be my friend or my family or my country, like that, or even my planet. But ultimately, the problem is right? I should have all the good things and I should be the most wonderful person and I should be all that. And if I happen to see someone else having those wonderful qualities, then what is a materialistic person's immediate response or reaction to that? He will feel jealous. He'll feel envy. When I have something, then I feel very good. And when I'm recognized, I feel very happy about it. But when I see someone else has some good quality which is being recognized by the world, then immediately I feel envious. So this is not the natural position of the living entity. The natural position of the living entity is to be a servant of the Lord. So how will a devotee feel when he sees something? So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is playing the role of a devotee. Yes. So when a devotee sees some wonderful, extraordinary quality in another person, he won't feel jealous. Why he won't feel jealous? Because he knows that even the quality that he personally has is not his quality, it is the Lord's property, which the Lord has somehow graced upon him. So similarly, when he sees a wonderful quality in someone else, he immediately recognizes this wonderful quality. Anything wonderful you find anywhere, that is the Lord's vibhuti. Vibhuti means the Lord's opulence. So he feels happy seeing the wonderful quality somewhere, either in another person, another devotee, or just in nature. When you see something amazing, extraordinary, he sees the Lord immediately. Because he's Krishna conscious, he sees the Lord in everything. That is what this verse in Bhagavad Gita is saying. Yad yad vibhuti mat sattvam. Right? Yad yad vibhuti mat sattvam Srimad urjitam evava tattad evava gachatvam mama tejomsha sambhavam. How is it even possible? Something wonderful? It is possible by the Lord's grace that a devotee is able to see. So therefore, my dear Keshav Kashmiri, you are surprised that I am a Shrutidhara. You should understand, being a Shrutidhara is also an amazing quality, but this is coming from the Lord. And similarly, you're so puffed up about what? About your being a great scholar, you're so puffed up, but it is not yours. This is coming from the Lord. This is by His grace. This is His property. So naturally, a devotee will not feel puffed up about his abilities because it's not his anyway. And at the same time, he won't feel envious of anyone else who has wonderful qualities, because he will see this wonderful quality is coming from the Lord. Yes, he will feel happy for the devotee, that this devotee has pleased the Lord. That's why the Lord has blessed him with this wonderful quality, like that. So, next. श्लोकेर अर्थ कोइल विप्र पाइया संतोष प्रभु को हे कहो श्लोकेर किबा गुण दोष. अरुणिता.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Satisfied by the statement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Brahmana, Keshav Kashmiri, explained the quoted verse. Then the Lord said, "Now kindly explain the special qualities and faults in the verse."
So when Mahaprabhu said, he quoted one verse and he said, can you explain it? So Keshav Kashmiri explained it. He explained the verse. This is what the verse means. He explained it. And now Mahaprabhu says it didn't end with that. He said, okay, can you tell me what are the faults and what are the special qualities? You know, special qualities means in poetry, in Sanskrit poetry, there is something called alankara, like that, like special ornaments, literary ornaments that are used, which makes the poetry very beautiful. So there are some special decorations, ornaments in this poetry. Can you point them out? And also there are some faults in your poetry. I would like to hear them. Mahaprabhu said. So, purport, Isha.
Not only did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pick out this one among the 100 verses and remember it, although the Brahmana had recited them like the blowing wind, but he also analyzed its qualities and faults. Not only did he hear the verse, but he immediately made a critical study.
This is mind blowing. So sometimes even if you are able to memorize it and repeat it, that itself was too much for Keshav Kashmiri. How can someone even memorize it? But Mahaprabhu not like a parrot that he heard and he registered it, it got registered on his mind and he repeated it. No, he actually analyzed it. He analyzed it and he saw what are the ornaments and what are the faults in one verse, which was one of 100 verses and which was recited at the speed of the wind. Now, just try to, imagine what is the scholarship of Mahaprabhu. So he said, can you tell me what are the faults and what are the special qualities? Okay. Vipra kohe shloke nahi doshera abhasa upama lankara guna kichu anuprasa. Yes. Krishna Shish.
The Brahmana replied, there is not a tinge of fault in that verse. Rather, it has the good qualities of similes and alliteration.
So again, in his usual way, there cannot be any faults in what I compose, because whatever I speak will be free of any faults. Goddess Saraswati personally speaks through me. So therefore, there cannot be any faults. So when Mahaprabhu said, can you tell me what are the faults and what are the special qualities? He says, there are no faults. Rather, there are so many good qualities, right? There are similes and alliteration in my poetry. Madhava.
In the last line of the verse quoted by Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the letter Bha is repeated many times, as in the words Bhavani, Bhartur, Vibhavati, and Apota. Such repetition is called anaprasa, or alliteration. The words Lakshmir, Iva, and Vishnu, Sarana,
Kamalotpatti.
Kamalotpati are instances of Upama Alankara for the exhibit metaphorical beauty. The Gandhi is water and Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. Since water and a person are not actually similar, the comparison is metaphorical.
Yes. So actually, maybe we will discuss this verse again tomorrow, because it's nice, and it's already 7:38. And if I go down with everyone reading, then it'll go past time. So I will stop here, but I will explain this verse tomorrow. What are the special qualities in this verse? So when we begin, in the beginning itself, I will explain the verse. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you. We'll continue tomorrow.
Hare Krishna Mataji.